All right, Bismillah, we will continue our discussion on the addendum to the 27th word on the companions of the Prophet. I believe we went through at least the first instance of wisdom, but I'll read it over just to give some context. Bismillah. Like Maulana Jami, I say, O Messenger of God, if only like the dog of the companions of the cave, I could be in paradise among your companions. Is it right that their dog is in paradise while I am in hell? He was the dog of those companions. I am the dog of yours. In his name be he glorified, and there is nothing but it glorifies him with praise. In the name of God, the merciful, the compassionate, Muhammad is the messenger of God, and those who are with him are strong against the unbelievers, but compassionate amongst each other. It's a Quranic verse. You ask, there are some narrations which say, at a time when innovations are rife, some of the righteous from among the believers and those who fear God will be on a level with the companions or even greater, or of even greater virtue. Are these narrations sound? And if so, what is their true meaning? The answer, the consensus of the Sunnis, the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, that after the prophets, the most virtuous of mankind are the companions, is a certain proof that those that are sound out of those narrations refer to minor virtues. For in minor virtues and particular perfections, a quality may be deemed preferable to that which is superior and in fact preferable. But from the point of view of general virtue, the companions cannot be reached, who are subject of divine praise at the end of Surah Al-Fath, and are praised and applauded in the Torah, Gospels, and Quran. For now, we shall explain 3 points of wisdom concerning this truth, which comprise 3 reasons out of very many reasons and instances of wisdom. Okay, so I guess just a quick summary in this section there, you know, Nursi wants to address hadith and things that say that, you know, a person living in our times with many years of separation from the Prophet, that we are still able to maybe reach or surpass the position of the companions. And, you know, we're trying to, his assertion is that we can't really pass them except maybe in some minor virtues. And he says there are 3 reasons out of many reasons. Maybe these are the most important reasons for why this may be. So first instance of wisdom, the conversation of the Prophet ﷺ was such an elixir that someone who experienced it for 1 minute received lights of reality equivalent to years of spiritual journeying. For in conversation, there is reflection and a being colored. It is well known that through reflection and following and imitating, and through the sublime light of prophethood, a truly exalted level may be reached. Like through allegiance to his sovereign and following him, a sultan's servant may rise to a position so high a king cannot rise to it. It is due to this mystery that the greatest saints cannot reach the level of the companions, even saints like Jalaluddin Suyuti, who conversed many times with God's noble messenger, peace and blessing be upon him, while awake, who even if they do this and are honored in this world with his company, they still cannot reach the companions. For through the light of Muhammad's, peace and blessings be upon him, through his prophethood, the companions' conversation was with him as prophet, while the saints saw him, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, after his death and conversed with him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, through the light of his sainthood. That is to say, the personification and appearance of God's noble messenger, peace and blessing be upon him, is in respect to his sainthood, not in regard to his prophethood. Since that is so, however much higher the level of prophethood is to that of sainthood, one should differentiate between the two conversations to that degree. Just how luminous an elixir was the prophet's company may be understood through the following. A primitive man, so hard-hearted and savage, he buried his daughter alive, would come and be honored with the conversation of the prophet for an hour, and would acquire such kindness and compassion that he would not step on an ant. And an ignorant savage would converse with the prophet for a day, and then go to lands like China and India to instruct civilized peoples in the realities and guide them in perfections. So I guess a big point is that the companions, they had direct interaction with the prophet, and the author is saying that just a single conversation, maybe 1 minute, something as small as 1 minute, or maybe an observation of his conduct could be, have such a spiritual effect towards the one witnessing it or being engaged in the prophet's life, that it would transform them completely. Whereas people, even though there are honored individuals who may have some sort of a spiritual contact, not a physical proximity or contact to the prophet, they may have that experience. It still is not the same type of effect. It does not have the same type of effect on the individual. And so he describes that as as interacting with the prophet as a saint, and interacting the prophet as the prophet of God. And so I guess I'm sorry. I think we discussed a lot of this last week. I don't remember the largest points about like the differentiation. Maybe someone can help me out on what we mentioned about this. Give y'all a second. Did we discuss the differentiation between these two types of experiences?
What two types? Could you repeat,
So,
please?
yeah. So he's saying that there are saints, right? Let's say honored individuals, people who have like amazing, spiritual attributes of in the times past the prophet's lifetime, right? They never directly involved, or directly met the prophet, but because of their, let's say, spiritual presence or something, their righteousness, they were blessed with visions of the prophet, right? So he says Jalaluddin Suyuti conversed many times with the prophet while awake, not even like in a dream or something like that. And then he's comparing that. So he says that is seeing the prophet or experiencing the prophet as a saint. And he's comparing that to the companions who interacted with the prophet as the prophet himself. And so the point he's making is that no matter how exemplary the saints are, or the people who engage with the prophet as a saint, they don't reach the same level of, the same type of interaction with the prophet as like the people who interacted with him directly. Is that clear? Right? Is there a difference between seeing the prophet in person or seeing him in a dream?
Yeah. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, please.
Where the sentence says, maybe if you could highlight it, brother.
Yeah.
Where it says, for through the light of Muhammad, peace be upon him's prophethood, the companion's conversation was with him as prophet, while the saints saw him after his death and conversed with him, peace be upon him, through the light of his sainthood. What is, so the word his in the last part of what you highlighted refers to the saints, or his being the prophet's sainthood, peace be upon him?
That is a great question.
Based on what I'm seeing, it sounds like his refers to the prophet, peace be upon him. His sainthood, peace be upon him.
I would, I might disagree, just because this is in contrast to the author's liberal use of sallallahu alaihi wasallam after him, and that's missing from his sainthood. So I would argue that this refers to the station of the saint himself, right? The reward, or the reward given to the saint for his good works is a vision, of the prophet, or some sort of interaction or something like that, which is different, I would say, from the companions, is because, I don't know, maybe they weren't, as in the example further, they were not the most exemplary moral individuals, but they were still given this, amazing opportunity. Brother Yusuf, do you have something to say?
So Brother Adam is right. Like in the original text, here it refers to the sainthood of the messenger. So in this regard, I guess we need to maybe, like, the question can be asked in two ways now. What does it mean that the messenger's sainthood? And this is one question. And the second question is, what does it mean that those saints are being exposed to the messenger as a saint rather than as a messenger? I think this would be the second question.
Sure.
Sorry, can you repeat the first question? It was two questions. Can you repeat the first one again? I got the second one.
So the first question is, what is the difference between the sainthood of the messenger and the messengerhood of the messenger? Because it looks like Sahaba was being exposed to the messenger as the messenger. But when saints get exposed to the messenger, they get exposed to him as a saint, is what I'm understanding, if I'm not getting it wrong.
Brother Birkan, you have your hand up.
Assalamu alaikum. So, continuing with the questions that Yusuf posed, so I will kind of try to address them, not fully, of course. But if you don't mind, I like to take a step back and ask the question: what is the importance of studying such a topic? Like, the topic is, the companions has a level, and you cannot reach this level. So what is the benefit of saying something like that? Or trying to justify this? Yes, you can, go beyond or further in terms of some tiny individual, the features, individual skills or virtues, but in overall, so he says, in minor virtues or particular perfections, you may go beyond them, but in general, in the view of general virtue, the companions cannot be reached. What is the point of this? This is like just a claim that you cannot reach the level of, let's say, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. Even if this is true, so what? Like somebody can ask, who cares, whether he's 120 and I am 105.
So that's a great
Go ahead, please.
question.
Oh, okay. So do you mind if I continue?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay. But don't hesitate to, no, don't hesitate to interject or interrupt. I don't mind at all. I just wanted to make sure that, I'm allowed to continue. So, and, recently, since, let's say, I came to Turkey, I realized people in constant, and I'm sure this is the same for many places in the world, if not all. The people in a constant, in a great, what is the word? I'm like, I will say disappointment, but you can correct me. In a great disappointment of Islam and Islamic values. So we realize that what we have, what we taught to have, what we believe that we have, is not as valuable as we thought. We are living in a society which is much worse than the societies around us. The values that we try to justify, the values that we try to live with, are not as good as the values demonstrated by or lived by other societies. We see that, our governments, our people, ordinary people, are corrupt. And there is nothing much that we can rely, that we can say that, yes, we have this value and I am proud of it. Within such an, the environment, within such a state of mind, you also start questioning the so-called this golden age of Islam, or the best period of Islam, because everything about the Islam now is in question. So, and of course, in the light of other developments, other ideologies as well, people are now, the questioning or saying that, do you know what, maybe it doesn't matter what values you have or what origins you have. We are in a constant development. The humanity is developing within an evolutionary process, and we are getting better and better and better, as a humanity. And if you are part of this development, if you are part of this evolution, then you are good. If you are not part of this evolution, then you are not good. And certain societies, the Western societies, for instance, they are part of this evolution, and we are not, and hence they are better than us. Within such an evolutionary perspective, you would say, you know, that today, what we have today, it is much better than what people had before. It's kind of, you know, a necessity. Hence, when you say something like, you know, the companions were the best in general virtues, you would say, no, no, it can't be true. And this is so important because this also takes away I don't know how to say, but a reference point that you can rely. Because in a constant development, in a constant evolution, there is no reference point. There is no such thing that, you know, this is the target or this is the role model that we need to, you know, take for ourselves. Because whatever ahead of us, whatever is coming, it will be much better than whatever role model or the reference point you pick in the history. It's constant evolution, right? It's getting better and better and better. Another part of it is that, you know, within, again, the same state of affairs, that people today think that everybody, no matter what title you give them, has their mind and mental skills. They have reasoning. We have this enlightenment, you know, the intellectual, the skills and so on, and you have to use them. And enlightenment is uh, possible through reasoning, just like, you know, the Western societies uh, dictate. You will reason, you will think, which is true to some extent, of course. And through thinking, through reasoning, through inventing something new, through new scientific or philosophical developments, you get better. And such a getting better, this is how what I understand from sainthood. Using your skills, using what is given to you, using your reasoning, using your mind, you develop. You become better and better and better. Or from a religious perspective, you get closer to your creator and then closer because you understand more and more, right? You open Quran, you understand something, and then you study, let's say, philosophy, and then you study some grammar, and then you study the Arabic language and poetry, and then some other religious sciences, and you get better. This is the path of maybe one kind of sainthood. So this is what people, at least what I understand right now, what majority of people think today, that we have better sciences, that we have better reasoning skills or scientific understanding. Hence, we are better than anything before us. And the next generations will be better than us, and the next generation will be better than them. So again, there is no reference point. There is a constant evolution, but there is no reference point. So when we see prophet as a sainthood, I think it refers to there's a person who receives revelation, he tries to understand it, and then he develops. He gets better and better and better using his skills, his understanding, within his personal journey. He develops like the nations or humanity or societies develop. And as a sainthood, when you when you converse with the prophet, you converse with a human being, maybe a philosopher, maybe a thinker. But when you take prophet as the prophet, then you say that there's a reference point. Yet there might be some developments within the life of a person, but there's a reference point, which is the creator. Whatever creator gives us, whatever creator gives him, his let's say special representative, the prophet, is right, is the one that we should be following, is the one that we should be imitating or trying to reach out. This is our role model, this is our reference point. And this is the best example. No matter in what century he lived, he was the best reference point because he was the prophet. We don't treat him as a human being, he is human being, but he is a special human being who was trained by the creator. So we don't care about the century that he lived anymore. We are not talking about a linear evolutionary process anymore. We say that, okay, this is a fixed, constant reference point. And whether we're living in 20 centuries or the 21st century, we will try to get closer to him, to the model that he presented. So this is treating them as prophet, as far as I understand. But again, in today's world, there is no such thing anymore, because there is always this linear, constant development for everybody, and everybody's same in that regard. There's no difference between you and Atiq and Yusuf and Aishanur, which is, again, true to some extent. And within such a society, asking this question and trying to answer it and justifying that you cannot reach companions make great sense, because it gives people hope, their hope back. It gives people their reference point back. So I apologize, I cannot be, clear at that time of night. But inshallah, through your comments and maybe questions, it will become clearer for me as well.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Birkan, for sharing your thoughts. I can certainly see your point of view, where you're coming from with this. And I guess to add some context, the chapter, the 27th chapter or word, was about the what is it called? Legal setting legal precedences, and like, how we determine different rulings. And I guess a lot of it is based on, what was passed down to us, right, in the schools of thought from the companions, and why we're not just creating new rulings, but maybe following the tradition. And of course, in order for that, we have to have a solid basis or acceptance of the companions and their teachings and such. So do we have any other comments? I don't think we answered the questions that Brother Yusuf had asked. Well, not not maybe directly. But I guess from what I understood from the the sainthood is more related to relying maybe on oneself, one's intellect, and that sort of thing. And the prophethood, right? Understanding the prophet as through his prophethood is something of accepting, right, the circumstances that you find yourself in, and seeing God's will in it. Brother Yusuf, you can help me out.
So this is interesting because if I'm not getting it wrong, as if the author is saying that after prophet passed away, when you are seeing the messenger, like the in here it says when they are awake. So in the original language, he uses the word yakaza. Yakaza means like awake, but awakeness of saints, as messenger himself also mentioned, my eyes sleep, but my heart does not. So they say this awakeness of saints means even in their dreams, for example, there is this awakened state. So like a regular person like me, when sleeps, I totally pass away. But if my heart would be awake, whatever I would see in when I go to sleep would still be meaningful for me. And I would get meanings out of it as if I am awake. So what I'm taking out of this is when a saint sees messenger when he is awake, let this be in a different vision when the person is like literally awake, or he is like somewhere in between sleeping and staying awake, but he is seeing the messenger. Like, I mean, in a sense, let it be when the person studies a hadith and sees the messenger through those hadith, or he went to bed and sees the messenger in his dream. So this person is going to benefit from seeing the messenger one way or the other. But the author says he is going to benefit from the sainthood of the messenger, not from the prophethood of the messenger. He's going to be exposed to the messenger as a saint, not as a messenger. What does that mean? So in the parts that he discusses the difference between sainthood of the messenger and the prophethood of the messenger, so he makes a distinction. He says that sainthood is, as Brother Birkan was alluding to, you're trying to get close to the Creator. But prophethood is you start, the Creator gets close to you in a sense. Or the sainthood of the messenger in this case is he tries to get closer to the Creator, but then he realizes his sainthood reaches the level of saying that, well, I can never reach the Creator. I mean, how can a created being reaches the absolute? It's impossible. But recognition of, or the realization of Creator is close to me all the time with all his names, actually. I am nothing but manifestation of his divine names. So the author was making a distinction saying that this is the sainthood of the messenger, which is with Mi'raj is converted into prophethood. Like once you get to this turning point, the Creator then starts talking to you. I mean, this is too much of a theoretical thing. I am far, far away from understanding its reality. But from the description in here, what I'm understanding is, as if the author says, when you talk to someone, you are relating that person to yourself, and whatever you are going through, you are trying to apply the behavior, the words and whatnot of that person to what you can relate to. So for the saints, they know what it means to get closer to the Creator. They have a way to do that. And when they read from the messenger, and which applies to everyone, everybody has a sainthood in this regard, I'm applying it to within my capacity. So in a sense, my sainthood becomes a limitation for me to understand the messenger, because this is all I know about getting to know the Creator. So, but at the time of the messenger, when the Sahaba was seeing them, now they have this, if you like, opportunity to see that there is something more going on in here. It is visibly showing itself. I think this is where that realization of those Sahaba were being exposed to the messenger as a prophet. Why is that important? Like, think about it this way. Abu Jahl, how was he exposed to the messenger? He was neither exposed to the messenger as a saint nor as a prophet. He was exposed to the messenger as a, Homo sapiens. He was seeing him as simply a human being. He didn't consider him as a messenger. He didn't consider him as a prophet. This is why he didn't benefit at all from him. But for the Sahaba, it was possible for them to see this extraordinary human being, in the sense that we haven't seen such a human. Like, such a human, what do I mean by such a human? A person who is at the climax of being an abd, who does not claim anything to himself, and thus his Creator talks to him. But everybody else, sainthood includes this gist of still claiming ownership over something, or putting something in between, not directly being exposed to the Creator or being open to the Creator directly. So this is why, in the absence of such an example right in front of me, I can imagine what it might be like. I can theorize what it should be like. But the Sahaba was having this being right in front of them. So they had this, if you like, luxury. But me or us in this day and age, or the great saints, they were not having this available for them. So I think this is what the author is highlighting as a distinction. I mean, these are, again, just a few, what I am trying to relate to. I'm not sure if this is exactly what it is, but I'm just trying to relate to it.
Shukran, I appreciate your comment. It seems, Brother Birkan, you have something to say.
Jazakallah khairan. So just to add to what Yusuf said, maybe to make it more practical, he said it is theoretical. So the way I experience it right now with the people I discussed is that you can, when you study Prophet and his life, you can study it as a certain school of philosophy or certain school of thinking, and you take the Prophet as a thinker, a revolutionary, the thinker who had some ideas, who had some great thoughts and great skills. He studied them, and then he studied the nature, he studied the people around him, and came up with some certain ways, certain the understanding. So this is just a regular thinker, and he becomes saint when you say, oh yeah, all these ideas, all these messages were given to him, but he received them because he was questioning, he was thinking, he was studying, he used his reasoning, he used his mental skills, or maybe life experiences, And then through such questions, the answers were given to him. And you can do the same. You would study him, you would study his ideas, and then you would make them better in your time, because he lived 14 centuries ago. You live in a more developed society with better mental skills, better reasoning skills, better understanding of the universe, and so on. So you can get better. So he is, just a great thinker, a great, philosopher. Just everyone else who somehow changed the world. So I think this is how you approach the prophet as a saint. So here, saint, we can take it as a mystical person with some extraordinary skills, but I guess the gist of the matter is not about this extraordinary skill, but it's about having a journey using your own skills. So I think this is the gist of the sainthood. And again, you can approach him from this perspective. When you approach him as a prophet instead, you say, he didn't, cause any such revolution in his time because of his skills or anything, but because he was given things. He was needy, and this need was addressed, just like the people around him had certain needs. They had a need of profit, and this need was sustained. So it's about your needs. It's about, as Yusuf said, it's about you being an ab, and that's the matter. So when you approach it from this perspective, you approach from the prophethood perspective. But as I said before, in today's time, in today's world, what is matter is your skills, how hard you work, how much time you put in reading books or studying certain things, and this is how you develop. This is our world, and in such a world, really, there is no place for profit. Even if you are a religious person, you can only benefit him as a saint, as a great thinker, as a revolutionary state person.
Shukran. Thanks both of you, brother Suhail.
Assalamu alaikum. Just wanted to add to that. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. It's I always find this conversation about companions interesting, because there is a distinction between. Well, let me back up. I think the most prominent, like profound sort of proof of that is that if you travel back and you think about if you were to be in that position as a companion, and to hear this message where your entire sort of not only worldview is being overturned, but also like I think, and I think people think in general is that, Islam, your worldview has changed. No, it's not just your worldview, but that worldview has implications on society and how you live your life, practically speaking, and the construction or
organization of society. And so you have to imagine that some guy comes along. He's a guy. He's a man within tribal society, but he's not. There's nothing necessarily extraordinary about him, in the sense that he doesn't have some sort of power or significant influence in society. Granted, people know him and they trust him, but he's not like not a chief. He's an orphan, um, and he's coming here, and what he's saying is about to overturn not only your own worldview but the entirety of society. I mean, that's, I don't think necessarily we appreciate like how significant that is. Like, people try to do that today and they can't get anywhere with that. And people's like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I mean, with any sort of ideology today, um, it's very difficult to do so. And then not only that, even if you have something, to get people on the same page to actually sort of revolutionize their worldview and then also society, it's near impossible, save that you enforce it by by a gun or a military. I mean, he has no military. He has nothing. Like I said, he has no material power, so to speak. And for that to happen, and then his people around him to accept his message, say, yes, this makes sense. I confirm that I submit to the one who gave you this message. And then to then also shape their life. I mean, practically speaking, hardships and migration, and then establishment of society, and then defense, and then expansion, and spreading the message. I mean, that's an entirely different view of the world that some of these people have. And now, like, as Yusuf and Berkan were alluding to, now I just study it, and like I can make personal progress. There's personal progress, but it has like no impact necessarily beyond myself. Maybe a little bit. Maybe like other people they're interested in what you have to say, but it's still, if you so to speak, it's still personal. It's still contained. It's still like nothing fundamentally is happening out there per se, by me spiritually journeying, so to speak. It's rather personal. It's not universal. And the prophetic message, or to receive it from the prophet directly, there is like a complete upheaval. Like, for example, I may quote unquote spiritually journey, if I can say that, but then I still go to the same workplace. I still have the same conversations. It doesn't, like, I mean, truthfully speaking, like, how much can I say that it dramatically changes my position in society? I mean, honestly, not much. Maybe have a conversation here and there, but it doesn't nothing is, I would say nothing to that extent. So for me to compare, like, oh yes, I'm studying X, Y, and Z, and understanding it, like the rational implications of what the message is and why it's necessary, et cetera, et cetera. That's fundamentally personal at the end of the day. I can study it, I can know that, but then what happens beyond that? Nothing. It just becomes an intellectual academic endeavor, which I'm not discounting. I'm not saying that's wrong, or it becomes a personal endeavor. I'm not saying that's wrong either necessarily, but you can't, like, I can't compare the two. It's like not even a comparison. It's like saying somebody who was taught from Einstein his own theories, and then receiving it from the 100th person who received what Einstein taught. Like, you're not gonna, like, they're not gonna get the same insight. Like, what was Einstein thinking when he came up with his theories? What were his ideas? What were his, like, thoughts and emotions? Like, that is, like, almost impossible to convey except firsthand. Like, you just kind of get, maybe, to use like one of the words that these people may say, is like some lights, or like Nurse was saying, you may receive some light, some sort of brief glimpses into his insights. Yes, you have his like theory, and you have the underpinning or rational necessity or the mathematics behind it, but like you lose sort of the human aspect by not speaking to a human being. Like you can't, like you can only convey so much by reading words on a page. Like there's a difference between, and it's like the distinction between speaking to somebody in person versus speaking to somebody over a video versus speaking to somebody over audio versus writing a letter or some text. There's a great distinction between the first and the last. So like in like from a human standpoint, because not only, and I think probably on this, like in my experience, you can like somebody can read something and say, like, let's say, I mean, we're talking about Islam or the Quran. Like my experience is somebody can say, oh yeah, I read this passage of the Quran, or this is interesting, or oh okay, but then actually for somebody to talk to them about it on a human one-to-one interaction is vastly different than somebody just reading something on the internet or something on these forums or listening to some TV channel or reading some book. It is a vast degree of difference. Otherwise, like why like this group has in-person retreats? Otherwise, like why not just do everything over email? It's the same thing, because there's this human element that like I don't think necessarily people appreciate when they talk about companions. Like, oh, they're not, companions are not as intellectual. They weren't as intellectual, though they don't even know that, because you don't know what every companion was thinking, because again, you never met a companion, or what sort of ideas or thoughts or emotions they were having. But you can't necessarily experience that, save you have a human one-on-one interaction. Because if I become a reductionist and say, oh, there are these sort of rational points like traditional theology, these are point 1, 2, and 3, and these are the rational necessity of point 1, 2, and 3, then yeah, but that's human beings are not robots, they're not machines. There's a emotional component that is not taken into account in traditional theology. But if you understand that there is a human component, that just being in somebody's presence when they're explaining something like has a moving effect, not just intellectually but also emotionally, then you can understand that. And not only that, such that, as he points out, that they won't even crush an ant. Nobody can, I don't think anybody can just read something in a book and maybe they can, but the vast majority of people, they're going to read something and then they're going to change like their view of the world, or how they act. They're going to they're going to bury a child, but now they're not going to crush it. That's a dramatic shift. And it happens with like human interaction, because human beings fundamentally, they take in through all their senses, their faculties and senses. Suyuti doesn't have that. Granted, Suyuti is a great, saint and scholar, but even he can't say that he directly met the prophet and experienced his sort of that human, that like it's sort of like this sort of visceral human element. Like nobody can except the companions. So I guess especially in the point of his 27th word, is that my recognition that just because I know so much potentially does not necessarily mean I've grasped the essence of Islam. I can know things rationally or intellectually, but that doesn't necessarily mean I've grasped like the complete human element of belief, because it's for human beings who have, like I said, many faculties, senses, emotions, thoughts. So those are my 2 cents.
Thank you all for your comments. I think that has really helped in making this section clear, I would like to move on to the second reason, but I'll check if there are any lingering comments, questions, or concerns. Brother Yusuf.
Before we pass to the next section, I want to say a warm, super warm welcome to Brother Nibras. After a long break, seeing him in the room, I got excited, so I just wanted to say hi.
It was nice to see you guys as well.
Brother Birkan.
So I think what Suhail said, it has a great importance, at least to me. So I like to add on that. Also, I like to welcome to Nibras. But beyond that, so normalizing companions, meaning, saying that, oh, they were just people, they lived in the time of Prophet, but that's all. And the way they, so again, I will go back to, to today's world, is that the way we see companions, or we discuss about the companions, is more about their limitations. So we say, they were just ordinary people. All of them had their different skills. All of them, they had their obstacles and limits, and they understood the Prophet to some certain extent. We even go further and say that some of them even understood him wrong, so on and so forth. So we normalize companions. We do not attribute any special, let's say, position for them. And this is again related to this worldview, or the understanding of the progress. We are better in terms of sciences. We are better in terms of, the philosophy. We have better reasoning skills and so on. So there is nothing special about the companions, we say. And this has a dramatic impact on our understanding of the religion, understanding of the Prophet. Because when we normalize companions, then we don't have any connection with the Prophet. Think about it. Our connection to Prophet as, someone living in this moment, in this century, in this specific region of the world. My only connection to prophethood, except the message, he brought, my connection with the prophethood as a human, but not, I'm not using the word human as Yusuf used, Homo sapien, but as Suhail used. My connection to Prophet as a human is only possible through companions and the chains of companionship. So the people, the companions, the inner circle, were exposed to Prophet. They had a human relationship with the Prophet. And then the second circle, the companions of the companions, had a human relationship with the companions, and then their companions, and then their companions, and then their companions, until it reaches to us. The relationship to the Prophet is preserved through these human interactions, through the human exposure. Again, in the sense Suhail used, as a valuable thing. Today, I am exposed to the scholars of my time who were trained by the companions of their time, or the previous generations, and then the previous generations. It's like a chain. Through such a chain, through such a human chain, I can make a connection, I can make a human connection to my Prophet. So it becomes more than, as Suhail said, it becomes much more than a sophisticated reading of the history, or sophisticated reading of the message. Even, reading the Quran, it goes beyond that. Now we are talking about the living Quran, how to live Quran. I was discussing with someone, and he told me that there is no connection between your understanding of Tawheed, or the angels, or whatever. As Suhail said, these are all personal journeys. There's no connection between them and how you live your life. I was shocked. Like, is it even possible to say that your understanding of the Creator, your understanding of its oneness, Tawheed, doesn't have anything to do with the way you eat, or the way you treat people, whether you lie or not. It is all about your personal understanding, personal journey. But the rest, how you eat, whether you lie or not, whether you treat others this way or that way, it's just the what is the word? The etiquette, the manners or morals. And you can reach the same morals with other ideologies as well. Whether you are a believer or not, you can reach the same, the morals. I was shocked, like this connection between human life and the message in the Quran. And this is that was said by a believer who studies Quran, who tries to understand, the Islam. But again, going back to what I said at the very beginning, who is also disappointed with what Islam brought to human life. What we have today in so-called Islamic societies is not acceptable. So you have to believe that, the Quranic teachings about the Tawheed and so on and so forth has to be separate, different than the way you live your life. Otherwise, you have to deny them as well. Because if the manifestation, worldly manifestation of understanding of Tawheed, or understanding of the God, is what is demonstrated in the Islamic society, what we see today, then it has to be rejected. How do you preserve it? By saying that, oh, it is your personal journey. It is what you have in your mind. But how you act is different. And it has nothing to do with the understanding of Tawheed, or, the Creator. the connection between the two is established only through Prophet, because Prophet teaches you, shows you how to implement what is taught in the Quran about Creator, how to project it into your life. This is only achieved through Prophet, by observing the Prophet, because he is the living Quran. But when you take it as a saint only, and when you normalize companions, when you don't have a human connection with the Prophet, there is no such projection anymore. You live your life as you wish. Atik lives his life as he wishes. And Nibras, he lives his life as he wishes as well. There is no argument, there is no comparison. Everybody has their own morals, everybody has their own the values and so on. Whether you believe in God or not, it's your personal thing. This is what happens when you treat Prophet as a sainthood, as a saint only, or as a thinker, or as a philosopher, or as a great military man.
Shukran for yet another beautiful comment. Brother Suhail, I think you had your hand raised earlier. Do you still have a comment?
Well, I was just going to say that I mean, it's nothing really additional, but it was that I think there is sort of this human need to have a human interaction or a human connection, and you know, there are some professors here, but I mean, otherwise, what reason do people have? I mean, you could learn things from books, but then why do people take classes? To have an interaction? And um, I think human beings like implicitly know that there's like a conscious sort of necessity to be or to associate with other human beings. Like, you know, you go to a class with other human beings because you want to understand the same thing and have an interaction with a professor or teacher, um, rather than just read a book. But yet, sort of my perception of you know, the prophetic message is, yeah, okay, there's what I believe in, but then beyond that, it has no sort of bearing. If I was saying beyond my sort of personal realization, and that's about it. Um, so it's very atomistic or individual. So I learned this thing from this man, and then I go about my life, and that's about it. So to me, that is a very different view, or a different reality than what messengership is. So
Shukran for that. Do you have any further comments or questions? If not, okay, Brother Suhail.
yeah, I was going to say one more thing, is that going back to his original question about, I think, what does he say about rife with innovation, or the hadith, or is it saying the last page? You know, even though, like, I can say I believe, and I truly believe this. Like even though, let's say, I can say, oh, my worldview is not secular, but functionally speaking or practically speaking, my day-to-day life is secular, though. Because as Birkan was alluding to, like, I adhere to the certain ethics of society or certain norms, and my interactions are predicated on those sort of ethics and norms. It's fundamentally secular at the end of the day. So for me to make a judgment, or for me to say that I'm better than the companions or at the level of them, let's not even say better, at the level, doesn't make any sense. Because not only is their worldview not secular, but then also how it manifests in their life not secular either. So to me, that's the difference.
All right, I think these are very good comments. And is the conclusion that we're reaching that yes, we are, because we have not been able to have a direct interaction with the prophet, is the path of sainthood, is that the only path available to us? Just because we come from a time after, we don't have access really of a direct interaction. Is that the conclusion that we're reaching here, that the companions, of course, they have their sanctified position, but this is, it's not attainable for anyone after? That cements their status, Brother Yusuf.
So I think the point here, the comparison here was like those people were exposed to the messenger, but they are the way saints or you get exposed to the messenger is not going to be like the Sahaba was exposed to the messenger. As Suhail was highlighting, your best bet is to get exposed to a human being. If you would like to benefit the most from the message of the messenger, look for how message of the messenger is being lived. Look for examples as such. And this would be your best. Otherwise, if you see messenger like in your dream or through a textbook and whatnot, you will just compare it to yourself. It is a guidance, but if now you are comparing the guidance you receive as such versus the guidance that the Sahaba received, this is incomparable. This is what the author is saying. And in this regard, your best bet is, I wouldn't put it like our best thing is the sainthood. We don't have access to prophethood. It's not like this sort of a things, because like in any case, I am benefiting from the messenger when I, let's say, go through any of the living examples. I am in need of messenger, and this is filling that gap in my life so that the terminology do not get mixed up. I'm trying to highlight this, but the emphasis of comparison in here is it that I'm going to compare myself with the Sahaba? There's no way I can do that. And my best benefit in the absence of what Sahaba had would be to look for living examples along with different resources who is going to reflect the light of the messenger to me. I think this is what it is.
Shukran, yeah, that's very clear. Any further comments or questions? If not, it may be better to end here than to progress further. Alrighty. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعوانا من الحمد لله رب العالمين.